Ever feel like you're talking, but not really connecting? Like those
Mhm.
conversations that leave you scratching your head more than feeling inspired.
Yeah, we've all been there. It's like you're talking at each other instead of with each other.
Exactly. And that's what we're tackling in this deep dive. The art of real, meaningful dialogue. We're drawing insights from Wikiversity's Practicing Dialogue resource, which really breaks down how to have those game-changing conversations that lead to breakthroughs instead of just more blah, blah, blah.
And you know what's funny? We use the word dialogue all the time, but rarely experience the real deal.
Okay, so what's the difference between like just chatting with a friend and true dialogue? What makes it so special?
It's about approaching the conversation with genuine curiosity, wanting to understand not just the other person's viewpoint, but also the space between those
Yeah.
viewpoints.
So it's not about trying to win the argument or prove the other person wrong.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone brings something valuable to the table, and through really listening, we can create something new together.
I like that. Now, the source also mentions this word deliberation. How does that fit into the whole dialogue thing?
Think of deliberation as that pause button we need to hit more often. Instead of instantly reacting or jumping to solutions, we take the time to really weigh different
It's like
perspectives.
that saying, engage brain before opening mouth.
Exactly. And speaking of engaging our brains, the source lays out these contrasting behaviors that either pull us toward productive dialogue or keep us stuck in those frustrating conversational loops.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. Like sometimes I catch myself getting defensive or wanting to prove my point, even if it means shutting down the other person. Not my proudest moments.
We've all been there. The source calls those toward dichotomy behaviors things like clinging to black and white thinking, avoiding vulnerability, or just straight up maintaining distance.
Basically, all the things that prevent us from truly connecting.
Right. But on the flip side, we have toward dialogue behaviors, embracing curiosity, being open about our assumptions, and being okay with not having all the answers.
So how do we actually cultivate those toward dialogue behaviors?
The source gives us 4 essential skills to practice: listen, suspend, respect, and voice.
Okay, those sound pretty straightforward. What's the catch?
Well, mastering them takes effort. Take suspending judgment, for instance. Our brains are hardwired to make snap judgments, right? But dialogue requires us to hit pause on that automatic response and choose curiosity instead.
Oh man, I can already tell that's going to be the hardest one for me. I'm a champion judger.
The good news is that it is a practice, not about becoming perfectly judgment-free overnight. It's about noticing when those judgments pop up and choosing to respond differently.
So instead of beating myself up for having those thoughts, it's about shifting how I respond to them. I can get behind that.
Exactly.
So it's like having the ingredients, but needing that recipe to actually cook something delicious.
You got it. And luckily, the Practicing Dialogue resource gives us that recipe for success.
Hit me with it. What's the secret sauce for better conversations?
It all boils down to 3 key steps. First, we've got to actively practice those 4 skills we talked about: listen, suspend, respect, voice. It's like learning a new dance move. You don't get it just by watching someone else. You got to get out there on the dance floor.
So less thinking about it, more doing it.
Exactly. And that brings us to step 2, removing obstacles. Think about those things that trip us up in conversations: fear, distractions, those pesky bad communication habits.
Oh man, distractions are my Achilles heel. My phone is like a magnet for my attention.
It happens to the best of us, but recognizing those obstacles is the first step to overcoming them. Maybe it's silencing notifications, setting aside dedicated time for important conversations, or even just naming that fear out loud.
Naming the fear, like actually saying, hey, I'm a little nervous to share this, but
You got it. Vulnerability can be surprisingly powerful. It disarms those defenses and creates space for genuine connection. And that leads us to the third step: engaging in dialogue with the right people.
so it takes 2 or more to tango.
Absolutely. It's about finding those people who are also committed to having these kinds of conversations, who are willing to lean into discomfort and embrace complexity.
The source actually gives some pretty inspiring examples of this in action, like the San Diego Dialogue Project. They're using dialogue to tackle some really tough cross-border issues.
It's incredible, right? They're bringing people together from different backgrounds and perspectives to find common ground and create solutions. And it's not just happening on a global scale.
Yeah, like those conversation cafes you mentioned earlier. It's amazing how something as simple as creating a space for open and honest dialogue can strengthen communities.
It's all about recognizing that we're in this together. We all crave connection, belonging, and the opportunity to be heard and understood. Dialogue gives us that.
So what about those times when we encounter people who just aren't interested in genuine dialogue? You know, the ones who weaponize words or try to dominate the conversation. The source mentions a tactic called the Gish Gallop. What's that all about?
It's like they're trying to bury you in arguments instead of actually having a real conversation. They figure if they throw enough stuff at you, something's bound to stick, whether it's true or not.
Oh, I despise that. It's so frustrating because you can't even address one point before they're on to the next 10 things. It feels like a tactic designed to shut down dialogue completely.
Right, and that's why recognizing it is so important. Once you're aware of it, you can start to see those patterns and not get so caught up in the chaos.
So how do we actually deal with it? Do we just throw our hands up and say, okay, you win?
Not quite. The source offers a three-step approach that's all about maintaining your own composure and steering the conversation back to a more productive place. First, you name it. Not in an accusatory way, but just by simply acknowledging what's happening. You could say something like, wow, you've brought up a lot of points. Can we maybe slow down and focus on one at a time?
Ah, so we're calling them out without being confrontational. I like it.
Exactly. It's about setting boundaries. And if they're not willing to slow down or engage with your perspective, that's when you politely disengage. You can say, I need a little time to process all this. Maybe we can revisit this another time.
It's empowering to know that we have options, that we don't have to just sit there and take it.
Absolutely. And that's really the core message of this whole deep dive. We have more agency in our conversations than we realize. We can choose to be more mindful, more intentional, and more skillful in how we communicate.
And those choices can have a ripple effect, not just on our own lives, but on the world around us.
Exactly. When we commit to dialogue, we're choosing to build bridges, foster understanding, and create a more compassionate and connected world.
This deep dive has honestly been a game changer for me. I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on the power of conversation and some practical tools to put into practice right away.
That's what we love to hear. Remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Be kind to yourself, keep practicing, and never underestimate the power of a truly great conversation.
For those listening, be sure to check out Wikiversity's Practicing Dialogue resource. It's full of amazing insights and practical exercises to help you level up your communication skills. And until next time, keep those conversations flowing, keep those minds open, and remember, even small shifts in how we communicate can create a big impact. Thanks for joining us.